Welcome to Defense Matters, where we are going to be talking mostly IDP and all fantasy football, one of the many shows on the Big Three Network. I'm your host, Jordan Rains, at 50 Shades of Drunk on Twitter, guys. I'm a senior writer at dynastynerds.com and co-host of the IDP 411 podcast, which you can find on expandtheboxscore.com. Great site. Go check it out. Scouting department over there is awesome. So today is going to be our first show for the 2020 IDP rankings. We're going to do 2020 IDP redraft rankings for linebackers today. So I'm going to break down my first four tiers of linebackers for you guys going into the season. So we will go ahead and I'll go ahead and kind of lay out what my thoughts are and how I kind of divided these guys into tiers. To be considered what I call an elite linebacker, which is going to be a tier 1 or tier 2 linebacker, essentially you need to have 100 be, kind of projecting a guy for 130 or more tackles and or 18 impact plays is what I call them. So that'd be forced fumbles, interceptions, tackles for loss, fumble recoveries, pass deflections, sacks. Those are what I'm kind of calling impact plays. These are all going to be under the model of IDP 1-2-3 scoring as well, which hopefully you guys know about. But under IDP 1-2-3, you have quarterback hits are 1 point and assisted tackles are 1 point. Solo tackles and tackles for losses are 2-point plays. Forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, pass defended, safeties, and block kicks are 3-point plays. And sacks and interceptions and IDP touchdowns are 6-point plays. So everything's a 1, 2, 3-point value or a 6-point value like a touchdown. So an impact, to be considered an impact play, it has to be over a 1 or a 2-point play. It's a 3-point play. Now, tackles for loss are technically a 2-point play, but they usually stack with a solo tackle. So it ends up being a 4-point play. So it still qualifies as what I call an impact play. So if you can get, 18 impact plays, maybe you don't get quite to that 130 tackle threshold that you really want for an elite linebacker one, but you're going to be able to make up for it in the fact that you're getting these 3-point plays and 3-point plus plays instead of a 2-point solo tackle play or an assisted tackle play. So that's kind of how I'm going to qualify my middle linebacker guys. And then also for the outside linebackers, your TJ Watts, your Shaq Barretts, even your like Zadarius Smiths or your Robert Quinns, if guys like that, if you want to play them in sleeper as your linebacker, they're going to kind of be projected in my mind to hit these thresholds. They really need to meet 3 or more of these requirements. So I'm projecting them to get 12.5 or more sacks, or 24 or more quarterback hits, 55 or more tackles, or 18 or more impact plays. So if they can meet 3 of those, there's 4 really that they need to, there's 4 options there. If they can hit either 18 impact plays, 55 tackles, and 12.5 sacks, that's kind of what I'm looking for. They missed out on the quarterback hits, but let's say they get 18 impact plays, over 12.5 sacks, and then they get 30 quarterback hits, but they only hit like 50 tackles. They're still going to qualify because they're making up the points that they're missing in other spots. So that's kind of how my linebacker tiers are going to be broken up. I'm just going to say that one more time for you guys. This is going to be tier 1 and tier 2 linebackers, first ones I talk about. So either 130 or more tackles and 18 impact plays or more. Or for outside linebackers, we want 12.5 or more sacks, 24 or more quarterback hits, 55 or more tackles, 18 or more impact plays. We want 3 of those 4 things to occur. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my rankings. If you want to look at my rankings too, they're on expandtheboxscore.com. Just go there. You should be able to just click on a drop-down tab and you can look at my rankings. They're going to get updated. So this is as of, we're about 3 weeks away from the season right now. So I just wanted to get these out there for people that are in those redraft leagues. So tier 1 linebackers. Now, there's only 2 guys in my tier 1. Now, these are going to be Darius Leonard is my linebacker 1 and Bobby Wagner is my linebacker 2. They're tier 1 because I think they're locks, linebacker 1s. They're, these guys, I think there's no way, shape, or form they do not finish as a linebacker 1. So they're kind of my tier 1 all by themselves. They're locks for linebacker 1s. You're getting a lot of things with Darius Leonard. You're getting the impact plays and you're getting the huge tackle numbers. Bobby Wagner, very similar situation, monster tackle numbers year in and year out. He's just coming off of his second best tackle season of his career in 2019, 159 tackles. So he easily meets that 130 threshold to be elite. And then he's also getting, 6 pass deflections, a forced fumble, 3 sacks, 7 tackles for losses, 4 quarterback hits. So he pretty much hits that 18 impact play threshold as well. Darius Leonard, I'm not even going to go into that. You know what Darius Leonard is. I mean, this guy he's called the maniac for a reason. He can do everything that you want a player to do on the field at all times. So that's my tier 1 and my tier 2. Those are or tier 1 guys. Those are my locks for linebacker ones in 2020. Now my tier 2 linebackers, this is a little bit bigger of a tier. So I'm going to read off, these guys I'm projecting them to do similar things as the tier 1 guys, but I'm not. They have a higher probability of falling out of the top 12 in my mind. But at the same time, all of these guys are playable as linebacker ones, I believe. So we got Jalen Smith at 3, Roquan Smith at 4, TJ Watt 5, Blake Martinez 6, Corey Littleton 7, Joe Schobert at 8, Devin Bush at 9, Levante David at 10, Jordan Hicks 11, Zach Cunningham 12, Demario Davis 13, and Chandler Jones 14. That is a big tier, guys. That is a really big tier of players there, but all of these guys have, shown themselves to be spectacular when they're on the field. Blake Martinez is a good example of a guy he just missed out on that tier 1. But, Blake Martinez, year in and year out, he's had 144 tackles, 155 tackles. You know what you're getting with Blake Martinez. You know you're going to get that number of, that tackle threshold met. Now, the pass deflections are a little bit low. Tackles for loss, the last 2 years were pretty high, but this year he dropped off to 5. So, the impact plays might not be there. But we know the tackles will be there. So he definitely meets that threshold of a guy that's a tier 1 or a tier 2, linebacker for your team. Another guy I want to highlight in this tier is TJ Watt. TJ Watt in a lot of formats last year was the number 1, number 2, or number 3 overall linebacker. He does everything. I mean, he does everything you want from that outside linebacker tier 1 or tier 2 guy. You can plug him in for well over 18 impact plays. I mean, he has multiple interceptions, multiple forced fumbles every year, multiple tackles for loss. I believe he was one of the tackle for loss leaders in the league. I believe he was 5 or 6 in that regard. He was, top 6, 7 in sacks. So he's going to be able to get up there and get you the points that you want from a linebacker 1, even as an outside linebacker. And I feel very confident in the fact that he's just going to not necessarily repeat the season he had last year, but he does enough, and he does it in enough different ways that he's a safe linebacker 1 in my mind. He's in this tier 2 because he could fall out. Like I said, these are the guys that I'm not super locking in, but these are all guys that I'm comfortable with as my linebacker 1s. I'm just going to read off this tier 2 again and kind of highlight guys. Jalen Smith was number 3, Dallas Cowboys. He makes impact plays everywhere, and his tackles numbers are crazy. I mean, he flies all over the field. He's been top 12 the last 2 years, so I love him. Roquan Smith, a little injury thing this last year in Chicago, but when he's on the field, he has an extremely high tackle rate. He can get behind the line of scrimmage and make sacks for you. He's a do-it-all linebacker. TJ Watt, just highlighted him. Blake Martinez with now the New York Giants, I highlighted him at 6. And these guys are ranked kind of in order of confidence that I have that they'll finish high. But again, this whole second tier is kind of interchangeable. Corey Littleton moved teams to the Las Vegas Raiders from the Rams. Joe Schobert moved to Jacksonville from the Browns, but he's been an elite linebacker for IDP the last 2 seasons. Devin Bush is a guy that is in this. I'm expecting to make this jump. I think Devin Bush is a lock for a linebacker 1 this year. There's not really anyone else really competing at a high level for tackles with him, except for maybe Terrell Edmonds, and TJ Watt, Cam Hayward. But at that linebacker position, he's going to be the alpha this year. He had a great season last year. Wasn't a top 10 linebacker by any means last season, but I think that the snaps come up, and he's an impact player too. He gets tackles, and he gets behind the line of scrimmage. I believe he had 8 or 9 tackles for loss this season, and so, he's a guy that I have a lot of faith in this year. Levante David, tried and true, Tampa Bay. He's the reason that I could not move Devin White into this tier, because I have so much faith that Levante David is going to be what he's always been, which is a reliable linebacker and at times an elite linebacker 1. He has to go into this tier, and Devin White hasn't been that guy yet, so I can't move Devin White in there. And when he's playing next to a guy that is that kind of an alpha like Levante David, we'll talk about him a little bit. He's in my tier 3 linebacker, which is still a very good linebacker tier to be in. Jordan Hicks came in 11, Arizona Cardinals, like I mentioned earlier. just a lot of tackles there. He played fully healthy this year, and he did make some impact plays himself. You know, he had some pass deflections. He had a couple sacks. So he's a guy that, you know, a lot of people got cheap last year, and he finished number 1 overall linebacker in a lot of leagues. He and TJ Watt were up there very high. So he's a guy that I'm very confident as my linebacker 1. Zach Cunningham at Houston, quietly, you know, has had 140 something tackles this last year, I believe, 147 maybe. I'll double check that real fast, but he's not a sexy name. 142 tackles. He doesn't get deep behind the line of scrimmage, only 7 tackles for losses last year. But he's on a team, and with the Houston Texans, that doesn't really have their defensive leader is JJ Watt, but JJ Watt is kind of, you know, this might be JJ Watt's last season in the league, and it's looking more and more like Zach Cunningham might emerge as kind of the alpha guy on this team. You know, this is his 4th year in the league. He's becoming kind of a veteran. Like I said, he led the AFC in tackles, and he's kind of slept on. So I put him in this tier ahead of some other guys. Notably, Fred Warner is not in this tier. I struggled a little bit deciding which of those 2 would make it into this tier, and I ended up putting Zach Cunningham in there just because I think those tackles are going to stay high. I mean, he's going to, you know, hopefully make up with some little more impact plays this year, but the tackle floor for him is just, it's there. Demario Davis came in at 13, Chandler Jones at 14. Chandler Jones, another outside linebacker like TJ Watt. He's playable as a DL on Sleeper, which is, you know, where you'll probably want to play him, but I have faith that he's going to, you know, he's gotten double-digit sacks every year for the past like 4 years straight. There's no reason that's going to change. I mean, he doesn't look like he's lost a step. He was half a sack away from leading the league in sacks this season, right behind Shaq Barrett. So, you know, he's a guy you can play as a weekly linebacker 1. Maybe he'll let you down because he's a little more boom or bust, but when he hits, he can win you a week. And that's what I like. So that was my first tier 1 and tier 2, which again, like I said, those are elite linebackers. Those are guys that I'm confident as linebacker 1s in 2020. Now we're going to move into my tier 3. These guys are great linebackers. I mean, these are all guys. There are teams I have where some of these guys are my linebacker 1s. These guys are what I consider high-end linebacker 2s with linebacker 1 upside. And so to kind of give you an idea of what the thresholds were I had to meet this, 110 or more tackles and or 15 or more impact plays. So that was compared to the tier 1 guys. Their thresholds were 130 and 18. So these guys are still going to get it done for you at a high level consistently, but maybe they're just not in that elite tier yet, or I'm not necessarily projecting them to make that huge jump. Still great players, don't get me wrong, and a lot of these guys have LB1 upside. You know, I mean, they could easily get up into that 130 and 18 area, you know, but I'm not as confident in them doing that as I am some of these other players that I had ahead of them. And then for the outside linebackers that do make it into this tier, 3 or more requirements, you know, 10 or more sacks. I'm projecting 18 or more quarterback hits, 40 or more tackles, and 15 or more impact plays. If you can hit 3 of those thresholds for me, I'm putting you in this tier because I think you have the upside to get there and maybe even push past that. So let's go ahead and get into tier 3. So kicking off tier 3, this tier is a little smaller than the last tier 2. There's only, I believe, 9 guys in this tier, whereas the last tier had, looks like 11. So we have Fred Warner, San Francisco at 15, Tremaine Edmonds, 16, Buffalo, Shaq Thompson, 17, North Carolina Panthers, 18, we have Jayon Brown with the Tennessee Titans, 19, Christian Kirksey, Green Bay, 20, Devin White, Tampa Bay, 21, Deion Jones, Atlanta, 22, Eric Kendricks, Minnesota, the Vikings, 23, Rashaan Evans, also with, also with the Titans, and then 24 in the ending this tier is Shaq Barrett with Tampa Bay. So interestingly, we have 2 Titans in this tier and we have 2 Buccaneers in this tier. But let's go ahead and lead off with Fred Warner. I love Fred Warner. I have several leagues where Fred Warner is my linebacker 1. So I hope nobody thinks that I'm knocking Fred Warner, but he had a couple of big games, like blow-up games. I believe like a game where he had 2 sacks. And his tackle floor is not as high as some of these other players. And there are good players around Fred Warner right now. That's why he really did not make it into tier 2 for me. He's he's probably the most likely to make that jump. That's why I have him here. That's why I want to focus on him. He's had over 110 tackles the last 2 seasons, so he does meet those thresholds. And the pass deflections are, good, 6 and 9 tackles for loss. So he's right there. And he could make that jump, but he just came in for me as this first guy in this third tier, just because I haven't seen him have that monster season yet. But this could be it, and I know a lot of people think it is, and he's going to be a great linebacker to have. Tremaine Edmonds, similar situation. He's been good, but he just hasn't popped like a lot of these other linebackers that are ahead of him. He's only in his third year in the league, same situation as Fred Warner, so this could be a big breakout year for them. Shaq Thompson, Carolina, he's essentially going to be, having a lot more responsibility now that Luke Kuechly's gone. Tahir Whitehead is coming in, but he's not the veteran on that particular team. That is Shaq Thompson. So I'm expecting Shaq Thompson to play some of his most productive IDP fantasy football in 2020. Jayon Brown, he's been a consistently good tackler. He's good in coverage for the Titans, and he's had a little injury history this last year. He only played 14 games, but he still finished in the top 30 at linebacker, I believe, missing a little time. 31 last year at 232 points. So he's still a high-quality linebacker, and he's a guy that I, believe you can play with as a linebacker too, but with linebacker 1 upside. If he played those other 2 games, who knows what his score would have ended up being. Christian Kirksey had 2 really, really good seasons with the Browns a couple of years back, both finishing as a linebacker 1. Had a little injury struggles the last 2 years, and the Browns, didn't bring him back. And now he's in Green Bay with his old, apparently his old defensive coordinator or his old coach. So people are expecting big things for him, and I think he is another guy that could jump into that linebacker 1, conversation this year. And that's what a lot of these guys in this tier 3 are. They are high upside linebacker 2s that could end up as, linebacker 1s when it's all said and done. Devin White is in this tier. I mentioned before, guys, he's playing with an elite level linebacker already. One of the best linebackers in the league, Levante David. So I just have to give the edge to the veteran. Devin White, I still believe he's going to be a solid linebacker 1 for your team if you need him to be that. More of a linebacker 2, but you can have a team with him as a linebacker 1, because I think he could push into that area. Deion Jones, he had one really good season. 2017, I believe he finished top 3. But linebacker scoring has kind of gone up the last couple of years. The talent has gotten higher, and Deion Jones has struggled with injury. This last year, he finished as linebacker 29. I think 21 is a fair spot for him. He could push into that linebacker 1 area, but I'm drafting him as a linebacker 2 at best right now on my teams, and I'm honestly not really drafting him because he's still going at a premium price. I believe his ECR on Fantasy Pros is still a top 10 linebacker, which is a little rich for me. If you take his best season in 2017 and you just take all those stats and put them into 2018 and into 2019 seasons, those would have been good for a linebacker 9 and linebacker 14 seasons those years. So his absolute known ceiling the last 2 years, if he would have hit it, was still just a fringe linebacker 1. So that's what he's in this tier for me for. High-end linebacker 2, could end up a linebacker 1, but we'll just have to see. Eric Kendricks, Minnesota, great coverage linebacker. I think he had the second most pass deflections in the league, or the most with 12. He and Demario Davis are great in coverage, and they make up for the fact that they don't have monster tackle numbers in the fact that they're great in coverage, because pass deflection and IDP 1-2-3 scoring, like I said earlier, is a 3-point play. So you have Rashaan Evans, who I was talking about pass deflections. Rashaan Evans doesn't get pass deflections, but Rashaan Evans gets good tackles for loss. First round pedigree, really came into his own this last year with the Titans. And I think that he takes another step forward this year. And he seemed like he's a difference maker. He had a pretty big fumble recovery in that game that they beat the Chiefs in last year when their season kind of turned around. So, and he took that back for a touchdown. So he's obviously a big part of that team. He and Jayon Brown are both in this tier for me, upside linebacker 2s. I have a lot of teams with both of these guys, each individually, and a few teams where I have both of them because I just believe that they're going to be great this year. And then Shaq Barrett, he's kind of a polarizing player because he came out of nowhere this last year at Tampa Bay, led the league in sacks, led the league in tackles for loss. I believe he had like the second or third most pressures. I mean, he just came out of nowhere, really. And I think that he has a good chance to have a great season again. They're bringing all the same guys back on that defense, plus they had a little bit better coverage, plus they added Tom Brady. Shaq Barrett's going to get to play next to JPP all season now. JPP is not going to be injured to start the season. So the pass rush there is going to be great. And Ndamukong Suh's still in the middle and Vita Vea is still in the middle. The pressure up the center is going to be heavy. And these outside linebackers there are going to feast this year again. And Shaq Barrett, I think, has a chance to, I mean, like I said, he's in this tier. He's at my linebacker 24. He's in this tier because I believe he can get back to that linebacker one season again. You know, these guys all have a chance to push into a linebacker one season. Still drafting him as a linebacker 2 for my team, 2 or 3. But they have linebacker 1 upside for sure. So that was the end of my tier 3 high-end LB2s with LB1 upside. I'm just going to read them back to y'all one more time. At 15, had Fred Warner with the San Francisco 49ers. 16, Tremaine Edmonds with the Buffalo Bills. 17, Shaq Thompson with the Carolina Panthers. 18, Jayon Brown with the Tennessee Titans. 19, Christian Kirksey, Green Bay Packers. 20, Devin White with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 21, Deion Jones with the Atlanta Falcons. 22, Eric Kendricks with the Minnesota Vikings. 23, Rashaan Evans with the Tennessee Titans. And 24, Shaq Barrett with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is my first 3 tiers of linebackers. Now, those are the guys that I'm most confident with going into this season on my team. I want as many of those players on my team as I can get when I start going into my drafts and getting my linebackers. You know, high-end LB1s, high-end LB2s with LB1 upside. Now, these next guys we're going to go into, this is my tier 4. These are kind of what I'm calling serviceable linebackers. Low-end LB2s for your team and high-end LB3s. These are going to be the players that you're probably going to be subbing in and out weekly just based on what's kind of available to you if you don't have a lot of those upper-tier guys. To reach these thresholds, to fall into this tier, I'm kind of projecting 95 plus tackles or more, 95 or more tackles, and 12 or more impact plays, or 12 or more impact plays. Or for the outside linebackers, I want, 7 or more sacks, 13 or more quarterback hits, 30 or more tackles, and 12 or more impact plays. So this is a really big tier. There's a lot of guys, this is kind of your Jag area, but there's still upside in this tier. So don't get me wrong. I mean, these are still players that you want. They're low end 2s, but they could, a 2 is a 2, and you can move up, based on one big game or down, So some of these pass rush outside linebacker guys, I'm very interested in. But to go ahead and start out tier 2, this is linebacker 25 on my board. Like I said, this is going to be a big tier. So I'm just going to kind of read through this quickly. But I do have my first rookie, and that's Kenneth Murray, who I think is going to be the best rookie linebacker to own. So I'm going to read through this really quick. Got 25, Kenneth Murray. 26, Matt Milano. 27, Bradley Chubb. 28, Leighton Vander Esch, Dallas Cowboys. 29, Za'Darius Smith, Green Bay Packers. 30, Khalil Mack, Chicago Bears. 31, Anthony Walker Jr. with the Colts. 32, Jerome Baker with Miami Dolphins. 33, Jamie Collins with the Detroit Lions. 34, Isaiah Simmons, Arizona Cardinals. 35, Logan Wilson, Cincinnati Bengals. 36, Danny Trevathan. 37, Todd Davis. 38, Miles Jack. 39, Nick Kwiatkowski. 40, Mac Wilson. 41, Devondre Campbell. 42, Tahir Whitehead, and 43, Patrick Queen. These are all the linebackers that I'm going to go over with you guys. These are my first 4 tiers. These are all the guys that I want on my teams essentially this year, and that ended at 43 for me there. So I'm going to hit the highlights here. Like I said earlier, Kenneth Murray, I believe, the Chargers moved up in the draft to go get Kenneth Murray. They did not accidentally put him on their team. They gave up some capital to make sure that he ended up on their team. This is a team that last year, Thomas Davis was one of the tackle leaders through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season last year, and Kenneth Murray is going to play that spot. He's going to be the leader in the middle of that field on that defense, and I just don't see a world where he is not a high producer. In college, he led the nation in tackles. He had like 160, 170 in like 14 games or something. I mean, he's an absolute tackle monster. And this defense should be on the field plenty with the new rookie quarterback that they brought in as well. So the opportunity should be there. Matt Milano, I love him in Buffalo. He's, quietly consistent. he's going to get you over 100 tackles, and he's going to get you some impact plays. He gets a high number of tackles for loss, quietly. So I really like that about him. Pass deflections are up there too. Bradley Chubb, outside linebacker / DL player on Sleeper. I really love Bradley Chubb this year. He's coming off the ACL injury, but he had the injury early enough in the season last year that he should be fully healthy when the season comes back around. So I'm expecting a big bounce back from him. Still in this tier 4 linebacker, low end linebacker 2s. I really, I'm not as confident in that as I am with some of the other outside linebackers I have up ahead of him in these upper tiers. Leighton Vander Esch is in this tier. He's number 28. He says himself that he's fine. He hasn't been worried about his neck for a while, and he's been hitting hard for a few months. I saw a video where he said that recently. So if that's the case, this is too low for him, but I need to see it. He's still a linebacker 2 to me, and the risk is still there. So I like him. I like drafting him. I like having him on teams, but I'm still worried. And if you're saying you're not worried, you're not being honest with yourself. That's kind of my opinion. A couple of guys here, Zadarius Smith at 29 and Khalil Mack at 30, outside linebackers. They have the upside to get past this threshold for this tier, which was tier 4. They could easily, push 7 more sacks. But they still fall in this tier for me because I don't know. Now I'm looking at it. I might have to do a little adjusting here, guys, because Zadarius Smith was so good last year at rushing the passer. It feels a little disingenuous to have him in this tier as I'm looking at it now. I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm going to move Zadarius Smith up right now. He's going to go up to 25, and he's actually going to go in that same tier with Shaq Barrett. Just letting you guys in on my process here. Khalil Mack, I'm still a little worried about him. He hasn't been the same player since he's been with the Raiders. Maybe bringing in Robert Quinn helps that a little bit, but I'm just a little down on Khalil Mack. He just hasn't put the numbers on paper that you want for IDP in 2 seasons in a row. He has had the way that he has been able to score has been hemorrhaged on his forced fumbles essentially, and these really disruptive plays. He's not getting the high tackle numbers. He was getting like 70 when he was in Oakland. He's getting like 40 now. He's not getting the super high tackle for loss numbers anymore. So I can't move him up. But Zadarius, I definitely could. Zadarius seems to be trending the right way. But like I said, that would make 31 now. Anthony Walker Jr. Quietly last year had an extremely efficient tackle rate. I think he was the 2nd or 3rd most efficient tackler in the league. Didn't play every down, though. He played like 78% of snaps. He was coming off the field. So he maybe not great in coverage. That's kind of what I'm taking away. But he had over 120 tackles last year, and he could push into that next tier pretty easily, I think, of the guys in here. Jerome Baker, he's not really a special talent, but there's not really anybody else on Miami. Jamie Collins going to Detroit is interesting. Jamie Collins was really good last year. The only reason I really kind of have him down is the move. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to be used. And they've kind of just been collecting linebackers in Detroit. So I want to see how they utilize these guys before I move anybody up or down. So that's why I have him in this kind of tier. But I think there's a good chance that he could move up too. Isaiah Simmons, rookie. Logan Wilson, rookie. The next 2 guys here. I don't know what their playing time is going to be like. So it's kind of hard to have them any higher than that, but I could easily see them getting around that 90 tackle mark. I think, Devin Bush and Devin White last year had like right around 90 to 100. That's kind of where I could see these guys going. So that's kind of why they fell into this tier. Devin Bush and Devin White finished right around linebacker 30 last year. So that's 34 and 35 for them. Danny Trevathan, he's a great linebacker. I mean, he's basically was pacing Roquan Smith last year. I didn't have him up higher because you don't have to draft him that much higher. You can draft him as a low end linebacker 2 on your team, and you're probably getting away with something. Todd Davis, next guy, Miles Jack, Nick Kwiatkowski. Of those 3, I really like Nick Kwiatkowski the most. Todd Davis, Miles Jack. I mean, they get it done on the field, but it's not something I'm excited to watch. Mack Wilson in this, at number 40 here. We've seen the last few years, we've seen the Browns have productive linebackers. They've produced linebacker 1s basically the last 4 seasons between Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey going back the last 4 seasons. Now both those guys are gone. We saw Mack Wilson on the field last year when Kirksey went down, wasn't super productive, but was the guy that was on the field every down. So we have to kind of assume that now that he's kind of one of the veterans there, he's going to be on the field every down again this year. And without that big dog in front of him, he's going to have to be the big dog. So I'm hoping for a jump for him. I would like to see him go up past this tier a little bit. He was a guy that a lot of people were in on last year as a rookie, and he got his shot. He just didn't produce like a lot of us thought he would. But, now that these other linebackers are out of the way and we do have that historical trend of a Browns linebacker being a good IDP option, maybe this is Mack Wilson's season. So there's a little sleeper kind of in this group that could take a pretty big jump that's kind of buried down here. 41, Devondre Campbell. He and Isaiah Simmons are both in this tier. Jordan Hicks is the guy I really want in Arizona. I don't know who's going to get the most playing time between these two because they brought in Campbell, and Campbell just came off a really good year, and they drafted Simmons in the first round. So, is it going to be the veteran or is it going to be the high draft pick rookie that gets most of the work? We'll just have to see. But they're both in this tier. Both are going to be good this year, one way, shape, or form. Tahir Whitehead, sneaky pick here. Like I alluded to earlier with Shaq Thompson being gone, or not, with Luke Kuechly being gone and Shaq Thompson having a heavy workload ahead of him. Tahir Whitehead, same situation, coming up from the Raiders to Carolina. And he may end up being that man in the middle, and I think Shaq may actually end up being on the weak side. So there's opportunity here with Kuechly, one of the best linebackers in the league, tackle monster, pass deflection guy. He's gone. Eric Reed's gone. So they bring in Jeremy Chin. They draft him. And they bring in Tahir Whitehead, a veteran. He's one of the only real veterans on this defense right now. They're so young. So I expect him to be productive. He's at 42, low-end linebacker 2, linebacker 3. You can draft him like that, but don't be surprised if Tahir Whitehead finishes in the top 25 comfortably. And then Patrick Queen, my last guy in this tier, he's a rookie. A lot of people like Patrick Queen. I'm a little lower than him than the consensus, just because we tried to do this with Patrick Onwuasor last year and Chris Board or whoever else, and CJ Mosley had a good year there a few years back, but other than that, it's been kind of shoddy for linebacker production with Baltimore. And Patrick Queen is still a rookie, and this is a weird year. And the snaps really weren't there on that defense last year. I'm not sure about how the historical trends of that go, but they were not on the field a lot as a whole total defense last year. So I have to imagine that takes away from tackle opportunities as well. So I'm a little lower than consensus on Patrick Queen, but I still think because the opportunity is there for him, he falls into this tier of guys where I'm okay with him as a linebacker 2 or 3 on my team. And, he's a guy that I can bench if I need to because I have a better option, or I can play, and I know that he's going to get play time. So those are my first 4 tiers of linebackers, guys. That's, 1 through the 4th tier ends at 43. So I'll just give you a peek at what tier 5 goes into. The first guy on tier 5 is Bud Dupree. He's number 44. But, check out the rankings. They are on expandtheboxscore.com. The tiers might not be in there when you go check because it does this weird thing when you put in your tiers. Sometimes it messes with your overall IDP rankings, which I need to double check on that. But I'm going to try to make sure that these tiers are updated in there very soon. But, thanks for listening to the show. If you guys have any questions or comments about these guys, just tell me what you think is going to happen this year. How are you kind of viewing things? Some of these players who you think I'm too low on, whom I may be a little too bullish on. Just let me know. Leave me a comment. Leave a review on the show. We should be up on Apple Podcasts soon, so I'd really appreciate that and a 5-star rating. Get these IDP rankings out there for people. Share them with your friends, share them with your league mates. So, share them with people you're going to draft with so that you guys can all have a, good competitive draft and hopefully draft some really good teams and have a great season. 2020, it's here, so happy to get these rankings out. Like I said, those are on expandtheboxscore.com. Guys, check out the other shows on the Big 3 Network. We have some good ones. The Big 3 IDP podcast, the IDP update, Mic'd Up with Mike Wohlert, and Bless the Knee. So, that's everything from me for today. I will be back again with my defensive back or defensive line rankings next. I'm not sure which one I'm going to drop next, but that will be coming soon. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Until next time, IDP Army.